impact.
Living in a memory.
Hey, everybody, welcome in. And we are here with one of my favorites, maybe my favorite, actually. One of the prophecy teachers that since 2019, I have been watching at Hope for Our Times, Mr. Tom Hughes, who is, by the way, sitting there with his book, Marking the Masses. This is not a commercial for that, but I will tell you this, that my wife and I got our copy and we have been reading it, and it is a phenomenal book. I am like, Tom, not just because you're here, I'm just going to pretend you're not sitting there for a moment. And yeah, the book is really good. Guys, if you have not seen this book or read about it, you need to get online and get it. It's actually a very, very good book. So I would suggest you go get that. Pastor Tom, this is Impact Podcast. This podcast is geared for having men in that are impacting their world. And so today we wanted to have you in, and I wanted to talk to you today about who is Israel, why do they matter, and why do they matter to us? Thank you for being here.
That was great. It's great being here, Jeff. Wonderful to see you. And yeah, in fact, we met in Israel.
Yeah.
You and I did.
Yes, we did.
I remember the first words I spoke to you were you're at the city of David, and I said, hey, you need to lift more weights.
yeah, actually you did. Yes, you did. I remember that.
Yeah. But no, Israel, if we understand the Bible, then Israel makes a whole lot of sense. Even what we see going on today. And I'll say this, the direction of things, and I think we're going to get into it, they're going to fulfill God's prophetic calendar. God has a calendar. He has a timeline. And that's what's happening right now. Everything, God is moving everything forward because he's determined what is going to take place. So that's why we are seeing these things happen. And all of the tragedy and all of the awfulness and all of the different people blaming everybody else, God is moving his prophetic calendar forward.
Yeah. Pastor Tom, I've heard you say many times that Israel is God's time clock, but Jerusalem is what?
Is I would say it's the second hand. It's the bullseye. In fact, the Temple Mount itself would actually be the bullseye. And if you listen to the narrative that's gone out to the Islamic world for a call to arms, so to speak, to rise up against Israel and against the Jews, they've taken the position that, hey, the Jews are going to build their temple on the Temple Mount. We can't allow that to happen because we have the Al-Aqsa Mosque there, and this is really what's going on. So we have to defend the Al-Aqsa Mosque, this holy place, what many claim in the Islamic world to be the third holiest site in Islam. And so that's been their rally cry, which is very interesting because in Zechariah chapter 12, the Bible says that Jerusalem will become a stumbling stone to the entire world. And that's really what is happening right now. So they're using Jerusalem and the Temple Mount as the rally cry to eliminate the Jews from the planet.
And that's really the goal, is it not?
It is, and I know there's different sides, even with people, some of my own colleagues, I've argued with them about it. And I said, listen, regardless of who's behind what, I have friends that are saying you got the Luciferians, there's others that are, hey, it's the globalists that are behind it. Regardless of all those things, this whole battle, Hamas doesn't have, this is above their pay grade, what they are doing.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to pull this off. It's been in the works for 2 years. Iran is behind this. And quite frankly, I do believe there's a globalist agenda that is behind it. Because it is beyond the ability of Hamas to be able to pull off what they are actually doing. So with that, I was asked a question just the other night when I was doing a live stream, and this person said, do you believe the globalists have instigated this whole thing? And I said, well, I can tell you this much. They will use this for their agenda. I mean, if we go back over the last few years, everything is moving forward, including There's the things that we've talked about with technology, global identification, tracking, digital currency, 15-minute cities, all of these things, those things are still moving forward. And I guarantee you, when this is done over in Israel, all that's going on in Israel between Israel and Hamas and Iran and all of their enemies, it will be used to say, hey, this is proof why we need to bring in this ID. We all need to get along, and it's going forward. This whole thing, I'll tell you this, Jeff, too. This whole thing will advance to the point where there's going to be some type of peace covenant that is going to come out of this, and the world leaders are going to demand it.
Yeah. Now, do you believe that's going to be during the 7 years of Jacob's trouble, or what we call the tribulation, that will actually come about?
I do believe it will kick that off. So as I see things move forward right now, the pressure is mounting. I believe it's going to escalate at this point. Time will tell, but I really do believe it's going to escalate. I believe it's going to get much worse from all of my sources over in Israel. I listened this morning, I was talking with one of my friends that's Muslim that lives over in what the UN calls the West Bank. I would call it Judea or Samaria, but he lives over there and he's become a friend. And not everybody's Muslim or everybody's Jew. They don't all want to kill each other, but Hamas is a terrorist organization.
Right.
We need to establish just the simple fact, just as we will with Al-Qaeda or Taliban or Hezbollah or the rest of them. So, but when I look at it, this is going to advance. There's going to be so much pressure that is put on Israel as things move forward and coming out on the other side. This will come out on the other side. Israel's not going to disappear. The Jews are not going to be eliminated from the planet. So they're still going to be here. But the pressure of the leaders in Israel to conform to some kind of covenant to make sure this never happens again is going to be so great that I believe it will come about. It could very well be that covenant on the other side of this that comes out that is the covenant of Antichrist. There's also a battle that's spoken of in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38, where Russia and Iran come against Israel. I do not believe that this is that battle. I believe this is a setup for that coming. But I don't believe this is it. But it's definitely a setup. I mean, if I could read one passage.
Yes, please.
Okay, I think this really will clarify a lot of things for just about anyone. It's from the book of Isaiah. So Isaiah was written 700 plus years before Christ. Says this. God says, therefore, hear the word of the Lord, you scornful men who rule this people who are in Jerusalem. So God is speaking of the Knesset, the scornful men who rule Jerusalem. Who rules Jerusalem. So Knesset, you scornful men, speaking of a particular time when it's bad men ruling. And then he says this in Isaiah 28, verse 15, because you have said we have made a covenant with death and with Sheol we are in agreement. When the overflowing scourge passes through, it will not come to us. We've made lies our refuge. Under falsehood, we've hidden ourselves. So what God is saying, there's coming a time when the leaders of Jerusalem, Knesset, they're going to enter into an agreement to avoid the threat of a scourge that's coming, a scourge that's coming against them, a military destruction that is coming against them. They know it's a lie, but they enter into it anyways, thinking we go into this covenant, it'll protect us. So if we look at the events that are taking place right now, there is a definite scourge that is taking place. I mean, cutting off babies' heads, ripping babies out of a mother's stomach and chopping the baby up and beheading the mom. This is unbelievable, these things that are happening and have happened. So that is a scourge. So as they come out on the other side of it, I'm convinced Isaiah 28 will be fulfilled. But they say, if you want to avoid that happening again, enter into this agreement. So the Knesset will, and I believe the world powers are going to be so intense, Israel will succumb to it. Then God says this, your covenant with death will be annulled. Your agreement with Sheol will not stand. In other words, your covenant with the devil in the grave. It's not is who you made a covenant with.
Yep.
When the overflowing scourge passes through, you'll be trampled down by it. As often as it goes out, it will take you. For morning by morning, it will pass over, and by day and by night, it will be a terror just to understand the report. I mean, when we look at now, we go, when we hear these, it is a terror to hear what's happened. You look, it is absolutely sickening. You can't watch the videos anymore. So
No.
and I believe this is what's happening. This whole thing is going to be a setup for this covenant of Isaiah chapter 28. To avoid another scourge like that, you've got to enter into this agreement. It's going to be a bad agreement. It'll be an agreement with the devil himself. God says it will be annulled. You should have trusted in me, but you didn't. And guess what? That scourge is going to come, and it is going to be worse than what they've already experienced. So I believe this is coming. There will be a false peace at the end of all this. Time will tell. It could be again 2 years down the road. There could be some kind of, ceasefire right now. I don't see that happening though. I see this escalating to the point where it's going to enter into a false peace agreement.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking to my wife last night. We were kind of going through all this stuff, and I told her, I said, something doesn't make sense about all of this to me. And the one thing that doesn't make sense, well, a number of things. Number one, that I agree with you. This is far above Hamas's pay grade. And they went in and did things that would incite what they're getting. This was known by somebody that this is the response that would happen and from Israel. So you go in and you do something that is along the lines of, what happened in Germany. You do that type and even more heinous things. When you do those type of things, the response you're getting. Israel doesn't play. They're going to go in and they're going to wipe the earth clean of you. But I truly believe that's the response that they want. And it's not Hamas. It's, of course, I know, and in the spiritual aspect of it, this is the enemy. But the enemy, the pawns that are on this planet pulling the strings, there's somebody else pulling that string, and it's far above Hamas. I believe it's far above Hezbollah. Whether it's the globalist or Iran or whoever it is, somebody else is pulling the strings. But the other thing that doesn't make sense to me is the fact that the United States is rushed in. What is your opinion on this situation that all of a sudden the Democrats, we've got, President Biden, everybody talking all of this stuff about, we support. We've got people in Europe and everything else, we support. And I ask that for this reason. People only have a stomach for war so long, no matter what incited it. It doesn't matter, because time heals things or time dulls things, and the news cycle goes quickly. And people will soon forget the fact that there were babies' heads chopped off, a mother's stomach was literally cut open, baby pulled out while she was alive, murdered, and then all of that stuff is going to be forgotten because the news cycle will just continue going. And then people will, that'll become dull to them. And all they're going to see is what they consider human suffering in Gaza. Why did we rush in there? What is your opinion on this? I agree with you. I think this is the match that lights the entire thing, that keeps going. Why did we rush in, and where are we going from here? Why does this matter to us?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and it's hard to know for sure, but I know this. I don't trust the Biden administration.
No.
I don't trust the Marxists that seem to be running so much of the country. I don't trust the mainstream media. So something fishy is going on. If you just look back over the last 5 years, I didn't trust them with things that we can't really talk about still.
Yeah.
Didn't trust them with Ukraine. Why would I trust them? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I didn't trust them with any of these things. All of a sudden, I'm pro-Israel because I'm pro-Bible. And understand, doesn't mean, as I mentioned, I have Muslim friends over there. You know, in fact, I think you even met some of my Muslim friends when we were over there too. But it's understanding what Zionism is, and maybe we'll get into that because so many people are arguing over what that.
Yeah, I would love it if you did.
Okay, we'll go. Let's go there in just a minute then. So with this, so I have not trusted this radical, evil Marxist administration that we have, and the media for years. I didn't trust Obama, none of that stuff, right? And so when you look at it, all of a sudden, just because they're seemingly coming along the side of Israel, I'm going to trust them? Absolutely not, because I already know what their character is. So something fishy's going on. Caroline Glick did a video about a week ago now, and she said, here's the reality about what's going on with the Biden administration. And Anthony Blinken, by the way, he's Jewish. So are there Jewish traitors? Yes, there are. In fact, in Daniel chapter 11, the Bible makes it clear. You have those who are of the covenant that are of the Lord, and there's those who have forsaken the covenant. Who's that speaking of? Jewish believers and Jewish people who have forsaken God, and they are actually traitors, and they line themselves with Antichrist. That's Daniel chapter 11. So we understand that dynamic. So with that, she says, you got Blinken and Biden over there. They're saying, hey, you need to give aid to Israel. You need to make sure there's aid that is given to the Palestinians. She said it rightly, because Israel needs ammunition. All of their ammunition is supplied by the U.S. Well, if we're going to give you ammunition, then you're going to have to give aid to the Palestinians. Everybody knows, that's willing to admit the truth, that doesn't go to the Palestinian people. It goes to Hamas. Hamas runs everything. They're going to keep it for themselves and their own families. They shoot rockets into that go straight up and come straight down on schools and on houses. They don't care about their own people. They're the ones who are blocking the way of escape for the civilians, and yet Israel is blamed for it. Egypt doesn't even want to provide a way for the Palestinians to come in because Egypt knows ultimately it's a problem for them too. So you look at this and you go, what's really happening here is Israel's hands are definitely tied by the United States. The United States is making it where you can't go in. And also, if we think about it, for the United States, for Israel to go in now, it's been what, 2 weeks? The longer Hamas, it is not, Israel had to go in right away. But since the waiting game has been played, Hamas has been able to position themselves, get ready, set booby traps, do all of these different things. Now it's just like, hey, Israel coming in, doing a ground war, they're like they're just going to be picked off, which I've heard has already been happening as of just today. So, you're looking at that going, okay, what's the U.S. really doing? And then they send over the two carrier groups, which they're threatening Iran, saying don't get involved. But ultimately, I can see this going to the place where the U.S. might just come to the rescue, so to speak, of Israel, and then at the end of it say, now you owe us. Either way, I guarantee you, the U.S. involvement in this is to strong-arm Israel to a place of submission. You're going to give a two-state solution. You're going to enter into an agreement. You're going to do what we tell you to do. Because right now, Israel is in a very, very bad position between Gaza, between the U.S., all the rhetoric out there, the narrative out there is Biden loves Israel. I'm not buying any of it because the day before the invasion, the Biden administration gave the PA $175 million. Where does that go to? It goes to Hamas. The Biden administration has been anti-Israel since they've been in existence. So why are they suddenly pro-Israel? They're not. And Obama, we know how much he hated Israel. I remember when Netanyahu went and visited Congress was probably 10 years ago. And the feeling I got from Obama was, I'm going to pay you back one day. And then, you look at the whole agreement with Iran on the nukes. You look at all of this stuff going, all right, there's something and someone behind this. And personally, I wouldn't be surprised if it was certain U.S. involvement planning with Iran to start this whole thing. But ultimately, though, what we are seeing is a just slaughter of the Jewish people and the threatened annihilation of the nation of Israel.
Pastor Tom, during the time of the tribulation, we saw that the destruction of 6 million Jews during World War II. Now we saw October 7th, we saw, something that, when ISIS was cutting people's heads off, somehow one of those videos came into my inbox in my email. And I opened it up not knowing what it was. And all of a sudden I'm seeing this guy get his head cut off. And, these things, they impact you, when you see them and you realize just how wicked and evil things are. With all of this, where do we go as people? What do we do as people to support Israel, and to align properly with what God wants for us? Because what I'm seeing a lot of churches that I'm like, what Bible are you people reading? They don't support Israel. They think Israel's done. God doesn't have promise for them anymore. And the church has taken Israel's place. And I'm out here going, no. What do we do?
Yeah. Well, the problem is just that. Church of what Bible are they teaching from? Well, they're not teaching from the Bible. Is what it really is. Whether it be Old Testament or New Testament, when it comes to New Testament passages that shed light on what's happening right now and help us to understand where this is going and how Israel fits into the greater picture of the Lord, they'll say, well, that's just symbolic. It doesn't really apply today. Well, it does apply today. In fact, in the New Testament, you have a passage where God says, do not be ignorant of this mystery, for blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come. Then all Israel will be saved. And God says, don't be ignorant of it. Don't think yourself wiser than what the Bible says.
Yeah.
But that's what people are doing. So you have pastors. One of the most well-known pastors in the country is out in your state. And he said several years ago, you have to unhitch yourself from the Old Testament.
Yeah. Hey, you can call it Andy Stanley. Trust
Andy
me, brother.
Stanley, unhitch. So and then at the same time, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but so unhitch yourself from the Old Testament. This is the thought of the majority of churches in the Western world, mainly in America. It's really affected America. And then the passages that do apply to the second coming of Christ, you've got to learn to ignore those things and realize they aren't actually factual. But you have, with an understanding of the Bible, we understand that God made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He tells us in Genesis chapter 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, it's an everlasting covenant. And also in the book of Deuteronomy, we find out God doesn't bring Israel back into the land, nor did he make this covenant because they are better than everybody else or more righteous or smarter. It was none of those reasons why. God had to choose a people. He chose a people for the land. So he calls Abram out of the Gentiles, makes a Jewish race of people, and out of this race would also come the Messiah. God had to choose somebody. In the book of Ezekiel, God says, everywhere where you were scattered to the Jews, you profaned my name. Deuteronomy says you'll be a byword, hence anti-Semitism. Everywhere you're scattered, there will be anti-Semitism. We've seen it since the beginning with the nation of Israel. But in Ezekiel, he says, I'm going to bring you back. Even though you profaned my name, I'm going to bring you back because my name is on the covenant. I'm going to bring you back to your home, and I'm going to give you a new heart. So this is the process. He's been bringing them back home to his land that he calls Zion. And so it's understanding that this is what God says. But it's the same with us. God didn't save me because I was better than everybody else. God made a promise, and the promise is that if I trusted in Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of sins, I'd be forgiven. I praise God that God is not a promise breaker. He's a promise maker and a promise keeper. So with Israel, it's the same thing. He brings them back into the land because his name is on the covenant. He said, I am going to do this, and then I will give you a new heart. That day is coming. So again, in the New Testament, don't be ignorant of this mystery, is what the Apostle Paul writes.
Pastor Tom, real quickly, and I want to really honor that time for you. If the match is lit, so to speak, this is the way I kind of look at Bible prophecy real quickly. Things are happening so fast, and yet it's like when you were in school. Do you remember when you were in school and you're sitting there in high school, you're in the 9th grade, and you look up at the clock, you're in the first period, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. Then, you're like, I've got a whole year to go. And then, all of a sudden you're into the summer and you're going into your 10th grade year, and you're going through that whole long process again of class after class after class. And before you know, you're out. You're graduating, you're in college, and you're doing the same. So it's happening so fast, and yet it seems like it's taking forever at the same time.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
with this, if the match has been lit, and I do not believe in setting dates. All these guys out here setting dates, I think are severely mistaken. I think it's a serious lack of biblical understanding, or you just want to do it, I guess. But if that's the case, man, we got to be close. I mean, we got to be really close. I mean, this thing can't go forever. We're already seeing Russia and Turkey and Iran, which is the main three that are going to come against Israel in Gog of Magog war. Turkey is now, in the last 2 days, really coming out against Israel. Russia is really chattering the same way. We know they participated in training Hamas. And we also have Iran doing their thing. We've got to be getting really, really close now to the end of this thing, right?
I would certainly think so. So, excuse me, the way the Bible describes the events of the last days is that they happen faster and faster, the closer you get to that time. So I've been teaching Bible prophecy for 30 years now, and I used to do and still do a once a year prophecy update on New Year's Eve. Well, if I go back 20 years, over the course of 1 year, I'd probably find 5 stories. I'd save them up all year. I'd be able to use them New Year's Eve. Now it's like every day, all day long, and that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
The events really are signs, and most of them are not pleasant in and of themselves. What's happening now in Israel, everything you mentioned with Russia, Turkey, Iran, you start looking at digital currency, global tracking ID, all of these things are not in and of themselves pleasant, but what they point to is, guess what? Jesus is coming back. He's going to fix all this stuff. I get so ticked off when I hear about children that are abducted and these sex trafficking and things like that. Jesus is going to take care of that. When it comes to, what's the island guy, Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend? Yeah. Listen, what about all the perverts who are spending the money and going out there and raping the kids? Ugh. Jesus is going to fix all that. I praise God for that. So that's what the signs point to. Him coming back.
Yep.
He's going to deal with that no matter how many of the liars and perverts get away with all these wicked things. So, but they will happen faster and faster, right? So all these signs. In fact, in Revelation chapter 1, the Bible says, John, the apostle who's writing it, says, the angel says, let me show you things which must shortly take place. That word shortly, we get our English word tachometer from it. The Greek word is tachos. And the idea is the closer you get to the end, the more it revs up like your tachometer, your RPM on your motor.
Exactly.
And that's what's happening. So now it's constant. It is nonstop. By this afternoon, by tonight, there's going to be more. Tomorrow, there's going to be more. Faster and faster and faster and faster. Everything is revving up to the point where I mean, for me, it's so obvious. It's like once you see what's happening, you can't unsee it. Daniel chapter 12, the angel tells Daniel of that day, because Daniel said to the angel, I want to understand these days we live in. I want to understand them. And the angel says, Daniel, close up the book and seal the words. It's not for you to know. But in that day, the wicked will see it and they won't understand, but the wise will see it and they will understand. The thought is that everybody in the world is going to know something's going down. It is big. It ain't normal anymore.
Yeah.
But those who don't want God are not going to know the truth. They're going to ignore it. They're going to know something's going wrong, but they're going to ignore it. They're going to be ignorant of it. But the wise will see it. The wise are going to go, wait a minute, something's happening here. I want to find out what it is. And they're waking up to it. And you probably see people on your channel that are waking up. They're going, hey, something. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, we see a guy like Bill Maher, liberal late night talk show host. He's questioning things. What is going on? So we're seeing these
Joe Rogan
things. Joe Rogan, looking. So they're questioning. The wise will see it and they will understand. And ultimately, our understanding comes from reading this, because this book actually gives us the insight. This sign, that sign, this sign, look for this, look for that. And Jesus told us to watch and be ready. And he said in Mark chapter 13, what I say to you, I say to all, watch and be ready. So that's what we do. But the signs are all pointing to this. So as we see the current events, I believe personally, like you, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, though, there's going to be a fake peace that's going to come out of this. I'm convinced it's going to come out of this. Russia will eventually come down. I don't think Russia's coming down tomorrow. No. I don't think that part is here yet, but it's coming. And so all of it is progressing. But again, if we look at it, it all comes down to Jerusalem, which is synonymous with the term Zion. And, I mean, I'm looking early this morning, and this anti-Zion stuff is everywhere. And they're saying, if you're a Zionist, you are the problem. But the term Zion, this is interesting, is in the Bible 152 times in the King James Bible, 152 times, where God says things like, in Psalm chapter 2, I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. Psalm 9, sing praises to the Lord who dwells in Zion. Psalm 14, oh, that the salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord brings back the captivity of his people, let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. That is specifically talking about the Jews coming back into the land of Zion. And 152 times in the Bible, and over and over and over. So God is the original Zionist. And when I hear people say, you're a Zionist, you're an evil person, I'm thinking, man, that's a problem. And I hear it from people at the church all the time, because they don't know, as you mentioned earlier, they don't know the Bible.
I think we've got about 5 minutes left. How does this impact us here in the United States? I got a bunch of guys out here that, some of them are going to maybe get this far into it. Some will watch it just a few minutes and realize what it is, and they'll turn it off. But we're going to have a few that'll get through to the end here and watch. How does this affect them? Because here's the thing, and I was talking to Pete Garcia earlier on normalcy bias. And when you see the thumbnail, you'll see I have a bodybuilder kneeling inside of a bubble, and the world is raging around him, and he's just doing his thing, right? And that is literally what Western culture has become. I heard this story of a lady who was in the Middle East, and true story, she became a Christian. She became a Christ follower, and she was almost murdered. She was on death's doorstep. Ended up being able, by a miracle of God, her and her husband got out, were able to come to the United States. She was here just a few months and told her husband, I think I need to go back. And he was shocked. This true story. He was like, what are you talking about? They tried to kill you because you're a Christ follower now. She said, but I feel like I'm being put to sleep here. There's no faith. There's no path. She felt like she was starting to be lulled to sleep in her faith. What does this mean for us in Western culture who get up, we go to work, we ignore the news? These are just things that are happening over here. How does this affect us in the last couple of minutes? And what should our response be?
Yeah, well, we are in a bubble, and we have been lulled to sleep. Christianity in America is very shallow. It's not tested. It's probably more difficult to be a genuine Christian in America than it is in other parts of the world, simply because a genuine Christian in America, it's hard to see what it really is. So when you see things like what we're watching happen right now, some people would say their bubble's being burst. I don't think it is yet.
No,
I think it's going to get worse. I'll tell you when you're going to see genuine Christianity happen is we have borders that are wide open. And I have no doubt, in fact, I did a midweek update on this today, as a matter of fact. 1.7 million people have arrived in the United States, and we don't know where they are. 1.7 million. How many of those are from groups, terrorist groups?
Yeah.
How many people were able to smuggle across some kind of nuclear device? How many people are like Hamas or Hezbollah or Taliban who are going to come into the cities and start doing things here? I mean, when you start looking at the reality of it, I don't think America has been in this protection place. We've been in a bubble for 200 and some odd years, and we are asleep. I think the church in America is asleep at best. It seems quite dead. Lukewarm might be a word to describe it. We're more interested in making sure that the music is appealing to us. We're entertained when we're at church. And why do I have to get involved with anything? I mean, when you look at what's happened to kids in America in schools, the whole gender thing, unbelievable. Why? Because pastors won't even stand up for this stuff. Pastors won't even speak the truth. They don't have guts. There's no courage. There's cowards, which is one of the reasons why, when you look at the book of Revelation, why judgment comes to the world is they're the cowardly. They won't stand up for the truth. So I look at this, if you're a Christian in Iran, or like this person you were just talking about, I want to go back. You're a Christian in China. Listen, you're going to see some genuine Christianity, because they made a decision. I might die, but I'm going to stand up for Christ. In America, do I have to go to church? I mean, you know what? I'm not so sure that's going to cost me $10. I'm not so sure. That's a little bit of that is such persecution for me. You mean I should show up at the school board meeting to protect the children? No, I'm going to go have a latte. American Christianity is a soft at best. And we do live here's the other bubble that we live in. And everybody lives in some bubble. Your social media, the things you see on social media are the things you like. So what you read and what you hear is things you're in agreement with. So you don't even know there's a whole different world out there, because you don't even look at that other part of the world. And then you're suddenly shocked to find that certain things are actually happening out there, because we all live in our bubbles, and we think this is what the world is. No, that's what your world is.
Yeah. Well, and lastly, the liberal news protects anything coming in, and protects people and keeps them in that bubble, and people just glibly go along with it anyway. So that's pretty much where it is. Would you just quickly tell people today how they can find you? And I'm sure it's your website's probably the best way, but if you could give us that and anything else you'd like to, we'd really appreciate that.
Yep. Hopeforourtimes.com is the easiest way to find me. I am on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and we do post obviously on YouTube, Rumble, and wherever else, whatever else is out there, Podbean and so forth. And we do have cool cruise coming up for anybody who wants to escape the madness.
Yeah, please. Yeah, go into that, because my wife and I went with you guys to Israel, and then we can only go to one trip this next year because my wife has started a job, so she only gets so much time off, and she won't let me go by myself. So tell us about what you've got coming up. Those are really exciting. You got the cruise coming up.
The cruise is coming up June of 24, and it is out of Florida. It's 7 days in the Bahamas. It's going to be fantastic. It's on the Royal Caribbean Adventure of the Seas. There's 5 speakers that are going to be there. It's going to be totally over the top. And so you get to have a whole lot of fun. Plus, you get to get really your mind set. You get to talk to the speakers too and find out things from them. It's going to be really, really cool. Some of the best speakers on the planet, I would even say. And if you end up going on that one, Jeff, I'll even give you the microphone. It'll be a blast. We'll have a lot of fun. And the other one is called the Footsteps of Paul cruise. It's over in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Seas. And we're going to visit like Turkey, Santorini, Athens, Corinth, then an extension to Rome and Pompeii. So it's whichever one you end up on, Jeff.
We're planning to go on that one for sure.
They're both going to be great. And anybody get info at hopeforourtimes.com. They can find things here. But so whichever one you're on, Jeff, it'll be the best.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Pastor Tom, I am going to keep my word and not keep you any longer. But thank you so much for being in here, giving up your time. This group of men, they need to be reached with the gospel. And guys, if you are watching this and you've made it this far, understand that doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter how strong you are, doesn't matter how big or whatever contest you may win in the future, without Jesus, you're nothing. And my mom used to point her little finger at me and say, Jeff, what does it matter if you win the Mr. Universe and you lose your own soul? Finally heeded that. Thank God I got saved, and I have no regrets. So, Pastor Tom, thank you again for coming in. And we obviously look forward to having you in sometime in the future and that cruise as well. So God bless you. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
All right. Thank you.
The impact.